We do have a mocap solution for uh, the rest of the semester. It's definitely not like an optical system like the OptiTrack, but I put a couple links for the last couple of weeks for Radical Motion. I definitely showed you guys Radical Motion, that it exists. And what's cool is that I just put them in touch with Unreal Engine on, it was Monday this week, no, Tuesday. And Unreal is going to support them as they create a real-time SDK for both Unreal and Unity. So what this is basically the fidelity of a Kinect, but without even having to worry about having the hardware of a Kinect. Just using your phone, just using your webcam, we can generate content. So right now they're in their second generation of their AI that's like the server-based AI. And you upload a video. I think there's some limitations for how long it can be, but it can be fairly high res, it can be fairly high frame rate. Then you upload the video, and then you can make it private if you want to, so it doesn't go to their database. I would probably recommend that at first. And then here it is. Like there's 30 seconds is the length, so we're definitely limited to how long it could be. They're saying kind of keep it at 30 frames per second, and it needs to be big enough so that they can get some information from it. So it needs to be over 700 pixels wide. And this is just Generation 2. Literally, I think next week, they're releasing Generation 3, which I don't have the release notes on. It's going to be a faster AI. It's going to be less menacing. I don't know, however you want to upgrade AI without making it the end of the world solution. So... and then they're going to move to doing real time. We have partnered with them, and we're beta testers for them. So as they upgrade to their third generation, it's still ours to use, and they're not charging us any additional. And then as they release their real time SDK, that's available for all of us to use as well. IDM has purchased a year long a license to it, and what they've asked us to do is to use them sparingly because they're paying for the server hours. And if we had 18 students uploading motion capture for all our different projects, immediately it would cost them a whole ton of money and it would clog the servers. So what we do is I have a single username and password that we can use for this class. And then as I do other things, like if I do a class our lab, I will buy another one of these enterprise licenses, and that'll be something for itself. But ultimately, the price is only $500 for a year of using this service, so it's incredibly affordable right now. And a lot of other departments are taking my recommendation and uploading to Radical Motion. Just so you guys know that I have done my research on all this stuff. There's another company that does this as well, called Wrench AI without the E. And it also has some solutions for game engines and for doing real time. It's a ton more expensive, and it's all still scripted in Python. It doesn't really have like an interface for us to use. So I went for the Radical Motion because they come to our lab. They're really nice people, and they are available for our feedback. So hopefully maybe we can even bring Gavin in, who's the CEO, and we can give him feedback and talk to him. He's part of our community. He's part of your guys' community now that you're using them. So without further ado, there is a section. So whenever you want to use it, ask me and ping me first, and we'll log it to Scott Fitzgerald's account. And then what we basically have is like an unlimited amount of time we can upload things and process. It takes about 20 minutes to process. And then you'll have an FBX of data. They have some other things. I really don't think any of this stuff is really that necessary. That you could just use their web portal. But they do have an app for your phone. They do have a desktop visualizer for when you download it and look at it. And then what they have that we need is this actual T-pose rig, and this is a little difference in our workflow for creating an animation retargeting to our avatar in Unreal or in Motion Builder. So I'm going to get some data. These are the free samples you can take a look at when you have a free account. So these are the ones where somebody else already uploaded them, and this is why when you upload, if you say public, other people can see it. So I could download this one in FBX format, and yes, this is still Engine version 2.6, and I will get as another version, another piece of data, and that looks like a fantastic dance. Yay! So you can see, like, good lighting, good contrast between the background. Keep the camera still. Put it on a tripod, leaned against a piece of furniture. Those are all things, like, as you play around with this, you'll see that there's better case scenarios for getting this to yield the results. Again, it's not perfect. It's very much like what you get from a Connect. What they're selling their services as is previs, is being able to do something really quickly at home and bring it into the office the next day, to not have to put on a suit, to not have to reserve a motion capture studio, to get something into the engine real quick. Let's go down that. And so I'll show you the full workflow, but what I've done is I've saved a bunch of assets that are kind of pre-prepped for you, so you don't have to do it. But should you be in the wild and be lost without Slack, then you could do it on your own. And this is documentation for how to prepare it. And this is basically what I've kind of just figured out over the course of the last couple of weeks. So it gave us a Blender sample of a FBX, and and they have a tutorial for how to retarget using Blender. Right down here, a video tutorial for how to retarget in Blender. What I don't like about it is that they actually use this T-pose rig to rig the character. So they just change the shape of the T-pose so that it matches the characters and then bind it. And I think that's not very useful for us because we're dealing with Mixamo and Fuse and other things, character creator from Real Illusion. Like, we need to be able to retarget from our pre-made rigs. So I've gone through down the path, and I've created this workflow. And it's actually quite simple, but it took me a long time to figure out how to do. It's basically like the difference of one button. So I'm going to say, let me go to my downloads where all that crap is, and my other downloads, and then let's open up this Blender file. So obviously we want FBX for doing retargeting, so let's wait for this to open. So this is the Blender file. It's in a T-pose, you see. And we're going to go ahead and export it. No big deal. You might have already done some Blender work when we were doing the face tracking stuff. There's no options here to choose FBX version anymore with Blender. So we're going to have to put it into Maya for a second. And this is, again, why I'm going to give you this asset so you don't have to go through all this hell. But I want you to let you know how the hell is. So this is in class T-pose from Blender. Might as well be verbose. And everything should be fine. And so what does Blender do that makes me angry is it exports an FBX that can't be brought into Motion Builder, which I think is quite silly. So we're going to put Maya real quick as an in-between. If I knew Blender better, or if Blender had different options for FBX exporting, I'm sure we could figure this out. Again, I'm going to give you this asset. I'm still drinking my tea now, but I might switch to red wine by the end. We'll see. What's that quarantine lifestyle?
Quarantine life.
Quarantine life. Yay. Okay. I don't need Blender anymore. Blender, it was fun. Alright. In class from Blender. Bring it in. But thank. Here's the thanking. Let me just try it again. Let's see what's going on. That's a lot of CPU. Zoom. Zoom's fault. And potentially Snap. Alright. That kind of froze. Okay, I'm going to import it instead of dragging it in. All right.
Do you have Task Manager pinned to your bar at the bottom?
No. Should I?
I do, yeah.
Hi.
Mm-hmm. She's checking. She's coding, man. She already keeping the game.
Alright. Trying to find... Alright, let's try that again.
Never too young to start school.
Alright, so this uploaded...
She's in charge, bro.
In charge. So this hierarchy is a little bit different from a lot of the other ones. There's all these kind of targets that we're not used to seeing. I'm going to keep them in there. I've deleted them as well. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to kind of move on from here. But you'll see that it also has our traditional skeleton, and everything seems to be the way we're used to seeing the hierarchy here named the right way. The one thing, though, is that I've noticed that both of these are not at the center of the 000. So I will just quickly move them, and then I'll export it out for Motion Builder. So for some reason, both this reference and this are at negative 100. I'll just move it to 100 and export it. Or 0, sorry. And then now it's ready to go. And then as a little trick, for full... when you're just doing skeletal stuff, for full compatibility with everything, export is an older version of FBX, and this is kind of a fix for Mixamo. If you see your FBX aren't working with Mixamo, I try to go for an FBX 2014 or FBX 2013. Again, this is just me having to figure out solutions when things don't work after a long period of time. So this is now the T-pose for Motion Builder. Cool. And away we go. I'm going to see how many pieces of software I could touch in one demo. How about that? That's what I'm good for. We should have a tally mark somewhere. All right. I am going to go find my female base pose that I use for demos, which is, that's our screen recordings or documents. So now we have this female base mesh, just something simple to retarget to. Bring it in, and there you go. I've playing around with a little bit of views. I like to actually use 2 views and have the second one actually display a hierarchy. It's actually a really interesting way of looking at this data and selecting stuff. So that's let's see if I can find it. I have to maybe select it. Trying to get creative. It's here somewhere. There it is. So there's this little cool hierarchy view I found too. So this is literally the hips and the spine and all that kind of stuff. So I can select things this way, which I found was a really easy way of getting through things. That's called schematic view, or Control W. Okay, so let's go back to what we know how to do. We have the hips here, and let's go ahead and retarget it, or turn it to a character so it knows that it's a biped. Fantastic. And I'm going to rename the character to something that's more useful than the word character. This is going to be our avatar. So, avatar. And let's bring in that T-pose real quick. So, back in my downloads, I have this T-pose from Blender. I'm going to merge it. Let's see. T-pose for motion builder. Sorry, the one I just made. Merge it. No animations, and we have their T-pose as well. Okay, and now I can characterize this one, but I'm only going to characterize the hips. So I'm going to find them in there. There they are. I can also drag it up and characterize the hips here. That's the IK rig. The hips here. So I can drag this up and do this as well. Bye, Pep. And this is data. Great. So when I now connect these two, they'll be linked. So I'm going to double click on the character and do what I did before, which is have this character cancel. Have this character being driven by data and say it's active. You saw it move a little bit, it's being aligned with it, and that's all it is. All right, so these two are now, everything seems to be characterized correctly, and I actually spent a long time to get here. I tried a lot of wrong paths, but here we are, ready to go. And the one difference that we do with this is instead of just throwing in our data, if I tried to zero out these rotations, it would all be facing in a weird direction. It doesn't have a frozen T-pose that I can zero out rotations. So I'm gonna leverage the T-pose that we already got from Blender to merge in the data into it. So to show you what that means is instead of just throwing in FBX, I'm gonna do an import of this radical data and our libraries. It's in the other downloads. And we have all this radical data. Where's one from today? This one right here. I can say open, and it's by default it says create. It would create another asset. But what I want to do is I want to merge it into this asset. I want it to be a new take, and I'm going to name that take. And this is going to be called Radical 1, or whatever I want. So now I'm creating a new take, and I'm going to merge all the information into my T-pose. It's going to just basically look for a text and do find and replace. I'm going to say import. There's some saying like it couldn't match everything. It couldn't match everything on the female pose, but it can match the radical motion stuff. I might take a little bit bigger look at this for a little while, to see if there's more errors I can fix. But for right now, I say okay. And what it does now is that it has this other character that's here. If I switch over to, there we go. So if I go back to take 1, it's on the T-pose. If I go over to Radical 1, it should be working. Yay, live demos. Let's see. Active plot takes. And I've shown this to some of the Avatar team, and they've watched me do this, so I've definitely taken this for a spin before. Let us make it not active. Go back to T-pose. Back to Radical 1. And make it active. Without further ado, let me just try one more time. Select branches, delete. All right. Let me go ahead, and I have the character called Avatar. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the T-pose that I made. This is one I made before. Alright, so we have the T-pose. And the master. Hips. And I'll characterize those hips. Great. Avatar is being driven by the character. And I could say, let me not make it active this time, so that's something different. I think it's supposed to be there. Alright. Then we'll go ahead and merge. If not, I'll move on. I'll obviously append this later on. Let's go to our class. And let's bring in a sample. Is it okay? Merge it, which is fine. Create a new take. And call this take 2. Say import. Okay, continue. There we go. I'm not sure what I did differently, but there we go. The take works. And I could continue to import. If I want to do another take, I could just import another file and create a new take. So that's one sample. Let's go back to my downloads. And then there's all these other crazy samples that I have. I'm probably going to import the same one for all I know. Let's give it a new name. Take 3. Great. Import. And then here's another take. Right? So here are this is the process for doing radical motion. Now you see that it's not on the floor. It's not centered. But that is something that I think will be fixed in Gen 3, which will be released next week. Otherwise, you can just position this as to your liking inside of Unreal. To export all this stuff, what I need to say is, right now it's being actively driven. I need to plot it to the avatar. I'm going to plot it to the skeleton. And then I can actually plot all takes. So I can continue to bring in these takes. And instead of doing one by one, I say plot all takes. And now I'll do both take 2 and take 3. It's going through all those keyframes, and now we're doing motion capture from a webcam or a phone. So that's cool to have that ability, and especially when this gets, be interested to see how they do it for the real-time plugin. So I can either export this a bunch of different ways. I can save it as, and then all the animation takes can be embedded inside my character if I want to import a bunch of motions at one time, or I can do an export, which will export the takes kind of separately, and each FBX file will be a separate asset to import one at a time. Test. You see, I could say which ones I want to export, and it'll export a take 2, and I can say one take per file, or I can have it all embedded within to your liking. Great. All right, so that is radical motion. I'll keep that in case we need to come back to it. So adding multiple takes using their T-pose, retargeting. The usage restrictions, I said, let me know if you're using it. They can track IPs. They know that we're using this for class. They know that 18 people could use it at one time, or in the same course of the semester, the remainder of the semester. They just asked us to be kind and not do it all, flood them all at once. So just ping me or ping each other and say, hey guys, I'm using radical motion right now, just so it's not flooding their gates. And that's also if like 18 people log in, their system will automatically block some IPs, and they've tried to add some safeguards so that won't happen, but it's just a thing to keep me in the loop on. All right, so that's cool. What I want to get into now is something that I gave you guys links for last week. We talked about mega scans. We talked about how this company, I think they're out of I forget where they're from, somewhere in Scandinavia. they've been doing photogrammetry to create this Megascans ecosystem. It's started off as just repository of assets, and then it's now become its own tool set, which is not only a way of importing and merging assets into Unreal, but it's also as through a plugin. But also they have a thing called Quixel Mixer, and Quixel Mixer is very much like a Photoshop for these textures, for 3D textures. There used to be, or there still is a thing called Substance Painter and Designer. These are very similar to, they're the same tool, but Adobe bought Substance and Unreal bought Quixel. Quixel is very good. I haven't seen any features that it's missing, but it used to be very, very expensive, and now because it's Unreal, it's completely free for everyone with the Unreal login. It works still for Unity, and it works still for Maya and all those other kind of things. The secret is when you log in, just make sure you use the Epic Games login. That's it. Like, you could just be using it for Unity, but if you go through the effort of making a free Epic Games login, you can use it for Unity and export to Unity. If you don't use your Epic Games login, if you don't want to spend the time making a free account for Epic Games, you then have to subscribe and pay money to Quixel. So it seems like a no-brainer to go ahead and sign in as your Epic Games login. And use your own, don't use mine. And then from here, you can be able to download Quixel Bridge and Quixel Mixer. I have already installed them both because you have to do a restart after you install Mixer, and I, of course, don't want to have to screen record and do a restart. So I already have them installed, and I already have the steps for doing the plugin loaded up. So if I go over to this document, which I will put on our week 12, here is the step-by-step for putting in the plugin for Unreal. Again, you want to make sure that you're choosing to use Unreal, and when you install the plugin, and what happens is you can open up a project and Bridge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work in my kind of throwaway project for the class to show you all this stuff. And then we can only migrate over, but we could test with. But what this does is basically gives us a way of navigating this bridge of online assets, download them, and bridge them into Unreal with the live link. And it's not only textures, but it's 3D models, it's entire tools for world building. It's basically everything but avatars and particles. Is this starting? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and open up Bridge. I haven't played around with this since last week, so hopefully I'm not too rusty on this. But what I've done is, because this is such a whole world unto itself, I have this extended bridge overview is basically everything I'm giving you in 5 minutes. It does over the course of, an hour-long tutorial. So it's in this whole step-by-step process is already in a tutorial. If you need to follow it and get into the nitty-gritty. But and then if you want to use the Mixer, it also has this is a much shorter video, but it tells you how to get into the different layer compositing using Mixer, and
Josh Powers here.
And so you can see, like, here's some assets from Megascans, and then you can bring them into Mixer, and you can start doing these Photoshop kind of layerings, but they're three-dimensional. And then you can really take these assets and kind of make them these custom materials, and then you can apply these materials to a bunch of 3D assets so they all fit cohesively within this world. This other tutorial that I started off with in last week's lessons goes in detail about how to use the whole suite to create a post-apocalyptic road, and I thought that couldn't be more fitting for our class assignment, is to how to use all these Quixel assets to come together and within like 10 minutes make some custom painting assets and world building. It's really amazing that this is all free and available for us. So that's a short 10-minute tutorial. It's a little fast, but it's definitely step by step. And so I don't have it installed here, so let's go ahead and install the plugin. I have the bridge installed, but I haven't enabled the plugin for this project. So I'm going to go to my plugins, and we'll say Quixel. Or is it Megascans? Megascans. Not the Trinity editor. Oh, because my class project is N423, and I've only installed this for 424. That's really smart of you, Todd, to figure that out. Thanks, Todd. I have to, sorry, you guys are also silent. I have to keep myself company. So, if I go back to my document here, the first thing on the list was, how do you upgrade a project? Let's go back. And this uproject file, I don't know if you've taken a look at it, it's actually just a text file saying what engine version to open up in. I could literally type in 424 if I want to, but sometimes you need to reference some of those custom engines we were talking about. So sometimes it's easier just to do the switch Unreal Engine versions, and that way you can just select some of these. Here's some custom engines I have built for the Pharos project I did last year. So I'm going to switch to 424. It doesn't open the project, it just changes that text file. And so now this text file is 424. That's all it did. And now if I open it up, I'm using the 424 engine, which I've installed Megascans to already. And I guess, I could also go through the process of installing to 423, but I think the step-by-step process is pretty straightforward here. All right, I'm logged in. Great. So setting up the Quixel is actually when you first open it the first time. So that's something I have to figure out how to find that. But essentially, this is an online repository. This is not local, and but it's categorized into these categories right here: 3D assets, and you see that there's subcategories within there, and there's just tons of stuff here. All right. So I can look at these antiques. Let's bring in some sculptures, and let's look at these Roman statues. Okay, so there's a couple of steps we could do. First of all, I've already actually purchased this one, so maybe I'll do another one I haven't touched yet. By purchased, it means like all these points things, we don't have to worry about that because everything's free for us. So I don't have this yet locally. I could take a look at this as a model. This is the different texture maps I could take a look at. If I want to inspect this to see, ooh, yeah, this is nice. And then I can look at it as a 3D asset in the world. I can rotate it around. I think if I hold down Shift, I could change the lighting to see how the different light moves around on it. So that's a cool thing I could do. And then you can look at the different shading things like what does it look like in its wireframe. This is a pretty a dense mesh. We're talking about level of details in just 1 second. But down here we can see that there's two different features of this. The scale is that this is human scale. This is as tall as whatever they think the average human is. And this is closed, or another term for that is watertight. Anyone does 3D printing knows the difference between an open or closed model, whether or not if you look underneath it, if it has a hole in the bottom. This one is watertight. All right. And then we have our download settings. And this can be just for this model, or if we go to our global settings, we could change it so that if we know that across our entire project, we want to only use 2K, do it for Unreal and FBX, then let's change the global setting, and then we don't have to mess. In general, when you talk about texture resolution, something that's a background asset or something that you don't take a quick close up to an asset, especially if like it's a face of an avatar, you'd want it to be 8K. Again, these projects get infinitely larger as you use larger scale assets. So I always err on the side of smaller. You can always come back and get the bigger one if you know that it's pixelating a little bit. There's presets for all those who are happy to use this for other things, for Unity and for all the other kind of real-time rendering, physically based rendering materials. Unreal preset, and FBX is fine for us. Now right here you see a section called LODs. This means level of detail. If anyone has worked with level of details, what's cool about the game engine is that it knows how close you are to the asset. And as you zoom into this asset and get further away, it automatically switches out the asset so that at the furthest distance, it uses an asset that's only this many triangles. And at a close-up distance, it's using all of the resolution possible.
Oh,
And
that's so cool. Sorry.
no, please chime in. It's a really amazing feature. It's really, really important for things like AR and VR, where you're pushing the graphics rendering to the max, so that when you're doing, like, if you're way far away from the city, it could just be a PNG on a card. It could be one polygon. But when you get close up, you want detail. And the game engines, because they understand which way you're facing and how close you are to these assets, it computes it and switches out these almost seamlessly. I think I can actually do that. Can I do that here? Let's see. Get closer. Unfortunately, I can't, but maybe if I say don't look at these other ones. We don't really need to mess around with this too much, but we could see if... I think it's a 3D mode.
If you have super high resolution assets in a game engine, though, does that make it a chunky program to run on other computers and stuff, though?
Yeah, it's so this is a CPU. To have to deal with polygon count is a CPU issue.
Okay, so that makes sense. It can't just like go to the cloud and pull the asset as it's needed, right?
For our case, correct. We're exporting all of these. They're kind of embedded in the same FBX, and you won't even notice the workflow. In fact, I'll go ahead and bring them all in for right now, for the sake of it, and we can analyze it inside of Unreal. But this is all based on the fact that I've already kind of done this, and I've done a global setting, which was to do all of them. And this is everything's all set up. All right, so now I'm going to download it, and this is now going to be in my own computer. Again, these are some large assets. It can be larger. So what I've done is I have a couple of hard drives in my computer, and my Megascans library is on my storage drive, which is much larger. It's not on my CPU, my operating system drive, to keep that from bloating my operating system. All right, so now it's local. You can see it's green. It's blue, but green means that it's actually exported, I think. So now I'm going to bring it over to Unreal. Oh, this is exporting it to Mixer. That Mixer's not open. I have this locally. I need to actually open up that plugin. Let's go over back to here, and hopefully I have either Quixel or Megascans.
Sorry, what's the difference between Megascans and Pixel?
Megascans is the company that makes makes Quixel.
Oh, so you're trying to see the name of the plugin. Got it.
Yeah, I'm trying to load it. It should bring me a button that's at the very center of the screen that I can start importing these things on. I've already added it to our class project. I just was trying to do it with this one, which, let's see real quick if that's wise. All right, here's one. Yeah, that's good.
I was at a scatter party, and I kept forgetting the name of the company was Scatter, and I kept looking at them. They're like, "You do know that our products, right?" I'm like, awkward.
All right, so when you install the plugin, you have to find your project folder, or your plugin folder, or sorry, your engine folder. I have my engines right here in a folder called Epic Games, and this is engine 424, engine, plugins, and I should have let's check 425. Give me 1 second. plan experimental. So let's just follow and this is for Mac as well. Let's try one more time. This one, and we want to export, not to Mixer. Let's go back to the launcher and install the plugin in the right engine. It says engine plugins. Oh, it should have an installation folder. Unreal Engine. So interesting, does it give me those things? Alright. Marketplace. Quixel. I see all these things are free. But you can get them through the thing though. Let's see. Let's find out Mega Scans. Scans. Mega Scans. That's the same stuff. No, it's going to be already in my library. Sorry about that, guys. So much stuff to prep. Quixel. I know I did it on this computer. Games. Give me 1 second, and then we'll move on otherwise. Export settings. Export to Unreal Engine. And now I can download the plugin. I must have done something on the computer. Okay, we figured it out. It says to close Unreal when you're installing the plugin. We may come back to this. Just I think it'll all work. But basically, it's a way of exporting it and bringing it into the Unreal Engine. And what it's going to do is it's going to give us a master material that all Quixel master materials use, and it's going to give us an instance for this one thing, which was going to really nice and tight bring us to all the instances and base materials that we made as homework. So let's go ahead and let's select the folder for our engine. So it's going to be in our This whole like live demo thing is just teetering on the edge. Plugins. Select. It's installing. And said it did it successfully. And then the folder for our project. Just totally at the edge. Alright. Which was this sucker. Maybe it's just the main project. Cool. And let's export. Let's go ahead and load up our project. The port was closed because I don't have the plugin turned on. Good. This way you guys see all the ways not to have this all set up. You're welcome. This is the class project. That's my mistake. This speech is fine. Here is this project. You see the class project now has Megascans installed. That's ours. Let me go to this one that's local first, that's not ours. Back to bridge. Bridge is going to, yes. So as you guys are searching other places, also make sure you check out these libraries for your assets. Cool. And I seem to have the plugin already installed because I installed it through the Quixel Bridge. But by having it open, I don't really have to do much here. I should be able to bridge it over. So let's, we have the right project, we have the right folder. Let's go ahead and export. Success. That's a relief to see. These winged dogs. Let's go ahead and that's the right project too. Let's export there. And if I take a look over here, it's importing. Just say okay to these things about normal maps. It's fine. Cool. And now let's bring in all those other details again. This is bloat if we don't need all of that stuff. We can uncheck all the other ones and just use, for right now, since we're not going to VR headset, high resolution. But give it a second. Sure. Cool. So Megascans, we have a Megascans folder now, and we have 3D assets. Here's the statue, and you can see that this is the textures. Here's the skeletal mesh, and here is the instance. This is going to be a very complicated instance compared to ours, which just had a color in them. But it's cool to see how this idea of inheritance of parent classes and instances can be, which is a major tenet of object-oriented programming, is kind of throughout the Unreal Engine. If I can find that window that just went kind of crazy on me. There we go. So we can change any settings we want to for this material, but they're all based off of a default Megascans material, which just like we did in class 2 weeks ago, it is if we want to make any changes to instances that doesn't have any capabilities, we can add those parameters, scalar parameters and vector parameters, in these rather large base materials. We can also do this. Everything you do in Mixer does that, embeds that into these materials. So it might be easier to learn Mixer so that you can add in some components, because that's more like Photoshop versus doing all this node-based spaghetti stuff. But if I go back here, this is the texture. Obviously, all the shaders compiling, so we can't really see it. But that is fine for now. And if I take a look at this skeletal mesh, we can see that it has these different level of details. And you might even be able to see the wireframe as we get closer and further away. So as I zoom out, it should switch them out. Boink, boink, boink. Which level of detail? That's full level detail all the way down to level detail minimum. Right, with the textures come in, it might be a little bit less apparent, but 0, right? And what's cool about Unreal is that they have this integration called Simplygon, and if you don't have level of details, you can actually build your own levels of details, and it's a very, very it's a very, very smart algorithm for reducing polygon size. So sometimes this is something that I only know that does really, really smart like this inside of ZBrush and Houdini. Both of those programs are over $1,000. So you can actually literally just use Unreal for the fact that it acquired this company called Simplygon that generates levels of details and export it and then put it into your Unity project. So it's another one of those software that's hard to keep track of. But it's a level of details is a cool thing, especially important for creating mobile games and creating VR experiences. So anyway, that's a feature here. That's cool. So we have these. We've now successfully used the bridge to download, browse. We've seen level of detail. We've done the plugin. We've exported it. We've seen that it has a master material, and then it has instances just like we did in class 2 weeks ago. Computer's going a little bit slow, so it's not too complicated, but all these things are parameters that are then labeled and able to adjust here if we were able to actually see the crap, but we can. Cool. So let's go into our shared project. I no longer need to deal with this. A quick thing is if I want to go to Bridge and I want to open up Mixer, again, installing Mixer involves restarting your computer, so I already have it done. So you haven't seen the initial settings, but that's all the documentation. But once Mixer's open, all these downloaded assets are in this, they share a folder for these repositories. And again, these aren't just assets, 3D assets. It is also 3D plants, so you could do foliage tool. It's different materials, decals. So there's a bunch of different stuff you can take from Quixel beyond just 3D assets. And again, you can drill down and find different categories to find all this stuff with. And if I wanted to, instead of exporting it to Unreal, I can export it into Mixer. And with Mixer open, it should load into Mixer. Which I just closed. So let's identify, okay, let's finish this up. Open. Nimix. Whatever. And so right now it's looking at this 3D plane, but I can also load from my local library assets and then adjust them just like Photoshop with different layers. There's a lot of features. I'm not going to say it's really, really easy to use. There's a lot of features. It's easy to get started, but just like Photoshop, you can get down a wormhole. So I loaded in the texture from that asset. And now we can start layering different layers on there and using masks and all that kind of stuff. Just follow the tutorial that I have linked in, and we'll move on to some Unreal stuff. Awesome, great. So now let's take a look at our repository that we're all working on together in Unreal. So as I said from our checklist, always check out pull first, so we have everything that's fresh from the cloud. Then connect it to Unreal, so as you use Unreal, you're locking assets as you're using them, and then always make sure you return it back to the cloud when you're done. So before I open it up, let's open up the working folder, and I'm going to pull. Cool. So we can kind of take a look in here, and I know just from off the bat that we have these materials, and right here I see that here's the people who turned theirs in. Right here I see that Moon made a folder called materials that's spelled slightly different, which is fine. I can always fix that later on. What's kind of cool is that if I wanted to just say, hey, can you put it back in again, I could take a look at this log, and I see all the different commits, and I see who committed them and what they did. So somebody modified a map, somebody a bunch of these are adding maps, and I'm able to remove certain sections if I want to fix these. This is if there runs a problem with version control, let me know it, and everything's solvable. But you can do it for entire folders, entire projects, and or individual files. If something gets really screwed up, and I know that the cloud has the right version, I have no problem if it's a smaller project, just deleting everything and pulling it all fresh, so that there's no version control issues. We're going to take a look at the work really quick. And we'll talk a little bit about why we use these sub-levels or streaming levels, which is a way for us... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, do we already have merge complex? I saw the window you brought up, but I didn't notice, I couldn't tell what the little red marks were.
The exclamation points are somebody deleted a file.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the merge conflicts will often be yellow exclamation points as little icons on these folders. Red just means you have a it's not a conflict. It's just there might be new content that you could pull, or it might be that you need to push some content back to the cloud. It's not really a conflict. It's just a versioning difference. And then when you push, sometimes you will see conflicts if two people have the same file checked out, and then you have to resolve which one is the right version. So we'll deal with that as needed, and it's one of those things that's awkward, but it's good just to dive in and do. So the way we work with Unreal is that usually when you work on a project together, you all agree upon a style guide. This is a document that shows how you want to choose different folder structures and how you want to... do you want to use Pascal case, camel case, or snake case? Do you want to use lowercase for first word, uppercase for second word? Like, these are the things that's good to make decisions when you start off with. And whenever I work on a big project, we actually sit down with this document and we come up with a naming strategy so we can find assets from other people. All skeletal meshes are pre-appended with an SK underscore, etc. And then if you come down to the levels, you can see that because only one person can have a map checked out at the same time, maps can live sequentially next to each other, but they can also be stacked upon each other. And in one map, somebody can be working on props while another person's working on landscapes. And what you do is you kind of create the level, and then you underscore and append to it another name. Like, we could use our individual names if we want to, and not worry about just saying audio, lighting, or geometry. But essentially, all of these levels can be stacked in the same place. So if I look at the levels, I see that we have all these sub-levels that have everyone's name to it, including my own. And each one of these has a sphere in it with their own favorite color. What we work out of initially is what's called a persistent level. New, and I'm going to do let's do time of day for the hell of it. And I'm going to save this as P, which means persistent, meaning it's always there, main. Okay? And now I'm going to look at a new window called levels, which I have kind of hidden over here. You see this is called a persistent level. I can now bring in these other levels. And my assets and my maps. And let's see if I can select more than one time. Yes, I can. And there's everyone's little spheres. All at one time. Just hanging out all together. Some people had some lighting so they could see their spheres. That's completely fine. But you see now how we could stack everything in the same place and edit them. There's a tiny little blue dot next to them, meaning that they're only being loaded by blueprints. So like if I wanted to use scripts where if I overlapped with like a door, it loads the next level. That's the default behavior. So if I hit play, all of them would disappear. Because there's no blueprint telling it to load in. That's confusing. Let's come back here. Stop. But if I right click and say always loaded, now they're always going to be there, and I can turn them off and on and see what mine looks like and just work with mine. But the idea is that only the one you're working on, like if I am Lynn, I double click Lynn, Lynn is highlighted in blue, and I'm now in Lynn's level. I go back to my world outliner, and I can say view options, only show me in the current level. Those are the things that are listed there. And the world outliner. And in Lynn's level, I think that it might be empty. So let's go to Junon's level. And he has a sphere, which is right there. There's no lighting, so we can't see it. But now I'm able to kind of drill down and only see the things that are in this one level. Or I can take that off, and again, if everything else is visible, I see everything that's visible. So again, if I only want to see what's in his level, in this outliner, there it is. It's a way for me to just see that asset. And then now I can see all the visible assets. So this is kind of the way the workflow for a way we can work simultaneously. And the rule of thumb is that no one goes in the persistent level, and that we don't ever auto-load the persistent level. I'm going to say that when we open up the project, it's going to be a blank level that's untitled, so that then you can purposefully choose the correct level to work in. And you don't have to work in a level, you could just work on assets as are. And then these levels can also be turned off and on a timeline. Where if I say level visibility track, I can say which ones are visible and which ones are hidden over time. Let's just split this. Edit. Split. Oh wait, you got to put it here, middle. Edit. Split. Edit. Split. Before I do that, let's go ahead and load a level in here. Do I have to type it in? Unfortunately, I have to type this in. So we'll say Ely's is in here. Great. And then this is kind of an array of them. And Junon's could be in here. Let's add another one. Let's go to that none. Alright, so those two are on. You see they're listed here with commas. I could take two more. Let's get cells. Alright. So for these to work, they have to always be loaded, not blueprint loaded. There's more cells. And then let's grab C's. Alright. Without further ado, I'm hitting enter to make sure they're on. I can split these. Let's say we're going to make a transition. Split that one. Split that one. And then this one we're going to say they're invisible after that moment. And this one is visible after that moment. Usually what I do is I make one track with all the names and then I just kind of copy and paste so I have all the names. So now, over time, these levels are turning off and on. So that's how you kind of make a transition over a sequence or timeline. And of course you can change parameters as you go around so that the transitions is not just like a pop. You know, you can make a light shine really brightly as it's transitioning and then go back, or you can fade to black and then when you come back in, here's a fade track. We could say boom and boom. And while it's in the middle of the transition, let's make it black so that as we play, fades to black, transition happens, and then fade back up. And all the while, the camera can be moving consistently and keeping the right pace and timing. Cool. Let's filter off that. And okay, so what we have here is a list of, or a bunch of different spheres with these material instances. And everyone went in and they changed their color. Alright? But what if we wanted all of them to glow at one time? These scalar parameters are, we'd have to put in, let's try it real quick. If we want all of them to glow, we go to that base material, which is, if you can't really see, the everyone that's a dark green is a material instance. You see it's kind of in parentheses. And some of these are actually just materials, which means instead of instancing them, they were actually copied. So they would be able to take the attributes from the base. And some of these are named just M, which means they're material. We should definitely change the name to material instance so they're easier for us to see. But if I open up any of these that were done, these are all done from the base color. So let's say we want to make all of them glow. I'm going to add in a scalar parameter for glow and put it in the emissive. I gotta make it a default to 1, otherwise they will be black without any base color whatsoever. Default value to 1. Save. So now, if I want to look at, for instance, this one right here, this sphere, that is Ryan's purple sphere, if I want to make it glow,
it's actually mauve, thank you.
It's a what?
It's actually mauve.
Oh, yes. Good call. I see that there's Ryan's. If I open up the material instance, it actually is looking at a base from Ryan. So Ryan made his own base. So Ryan made a copy of the base and then made an instance of his base. So it can't carry that scalar parameter. Again, this is why all of these should be made by first just selecting on the base color and creating an instance. So they're all inheriting the properties of the base color.
Sorry, it was all about the base.
No, that's okay. That's why we're looking at this all together. If I want to look at the one I made, which is right here, it has inherited this glow. I can always go over here, and let's take away some of these lights real quick.
So if we didn't use the base that was in the, because I don't think I copied the base. Is there a way that you can just decide that all of these materials should have a base, like the same parent base?
Yeah, you can select a parent base right here. And now
you have to do it manually?
Yeah, for what? Yeah. And then we have to put in Ryan's mauve again.
Mauve.
Mauve. It didn't seem to.
Mauve.
Yeah, potato.
Like mauve in the webcam.
So there we go. Base Ryan now is looking at. Let's double click it and see what happens. So the idea is that apparently that didn't work. Let's see, save as child, save sibling. So the idea is to do it right to begin with, is to right click off and make an instance of, so we can inherit all the properties from base material, because this is how all the Quixel stuff is done as well, and this is a good workflow. So that, like for instance, right now I want to make everything that is my so this is my material instance for Todd, and if I bring it on a sphere, let's go back in my persistent level, or let's go back into, it doesn't really matter. Let's see. Let's go into Todd, bring in a sphere. So I have a sphere, bring in my base, and in real time I can adjust my glow and my color. Alright, okay, so glow is a 0. Let's change the default then to 0. But as we see, if I adjust this one, it's just an instance though, and only mine is glowing. Right? And if we wanted to do this in a sequencer, if we wanted to do this with code, we'd have to do it for each individual sphere. Let's go in here and look at the base. So that's a copy. That's not a instance. This one right here. So we'd have to then go into glow here and adjust that one at a time. Right? So that's not efficient. Whenever you do things repeatedly like that, there's a smarter way of doing things. So the last kind of concept I want to do to wrap up on is what's called a global parameter. And these could be really great ways of making transitions where, like, somebody's typing furiously.
Sorry.
So as we'll think about making transitions and think about how you can make these kind of blend together, we could think about adding more capabilities for these global parameters. So I'm going to make what's called a global parameter collection. It's a new kind of asset. Let me go ahead and save all. I didn't even do the thing I told everyone I wanted everyone to do, which is connect to source control. We start off with, we have to get my my information from Slack, so I'll do that later on. Hopefully no one's in there right now. All right. And let's go ahead and make a global parameter collection. So, material parameter collection, it's just a way of creating a value that we can find anywhere inside the project. I'll call these transitions. And then we want this transition to be a scalar, right? So it's a one number by itself, and this one could be called glow. And because I've learned that I want the default to be 0, I'll keep it at 0. And I now have a glow. I can also call it glow global or something like that, so I know. But glow is sufficient. And now if I go to my base again, which was called base color, instead of the scalar parameter that's could be done by each instance, I'm going to bring in a global parameter. And I can just, it's a collection of parameters. Bring in the glow, or emissive. Let me have to choose the collection. And let me choose which one. And then now it is a single scalar that is going to emissive channel. It's no longer a value being driven by this scalar parameter in instance. I don't need this anymore. And if we take a look back at both Amy and my base, or our instance, that parameter is now missing. And we could drive it globally in like a sequencer or through our blueprints. So if I make a new little level timeline, I can open that back up. There's a track called material parameter collection track. I bring in transitions, and then let's say it starts. Bring in glow global. It starts off 0. It ends on 0. But at this transition, I want this to be, let's disable the fade for a second. Yeah, whatever. I'll just drive it. And then we can see that all of them glow together. Fast forward to that keyframe, make it something reasonable. So this is a global parameter, and this is a quick way for me to check all the ones that are inheriting the properties from that base parameter. So these are just some easy things you could do to by using instancing and inheritance. By using, if you want to take your Quixel assets and make them all have a glow, you go into the. We don't have any Quixel in this one just yet. If I put in my other project, we can open up the base asset. You add in a global parameter for glow, then every single Quixel asset you have will glow on a timeline with you. So that's the kind of idea of like working smarter, not harder, and ways we can do things like change color over time. A vector parameter could be a vector means 3, so it's a color. Make it default white, and we'll call it color add. And so I'll go back into this base. Whatever everyone else chooses, I can multiply that by my own color, which is a collection of parameters, which will choose this collection and this parameter. This one doesn't have an alpha, and this one does. So I actually need to take away the alpha, which is a little shader math. It's called a component mask. I'm going to mask out the alpha. I'm essentially going to take away the pin for alpha, and this is now a 3 vector. No error there. So now everything is being multiplied by this red. Bring back in color add. And let's bring down the glow. and we see how if I change this, the red gets deleted. Let's do an additive real quick. Instead of multiply, we need to add red. The idea is to try to do small little bits of changes that can affect a lot of things at once, since we have, these larger worlds and all these assets. Great, there's that color, and then we're adding red and taking away red. So literally, I had a project one time where at the very end, not only the lights but all the assets also shifted to white from their colors, so that it was like this entire world filled with white assets for like an ending. So this is how to leverage inheritance. I think that the only thing we're at the end of class now. I was going to do a little trick with some location based opacity, but it's not essential. If somebody needs it, I can always add it in. But yeah, we got everything done today, even with all the mishaps and stumbles along the way. Thank you for your patience and your feedback. I'm going to stop recording now